The Four Infamous Figures. Around that same time, 4 infamous figures became known among those near the Trollclaw Ford, the River Thultanthar, and the Woods of Sharp Teeth. During the Battle of the Elder Netherbrain, the sky filled with nautiloid ships and horrors as the Swordcoast came under attack and plunged into apocalyptic chaos. As Baldur's Gate suffered immense damage and loss, the Illithids descended upon the eastern areas of the coast. Many refugees escaped from the Fields of the Dead and the Woods of Sharp Teeth as the Mind Flayers rapidly took over. 4 figures emerged from that day. Joseph St. Vermillion Grace. A product of a union deal between the Grace family of Baldur's Gate and the Vermillion family of the Underdark. The arrangement was sealed in blood, cementing a marriage between Joseph St. Vermillion Grace and Julia Vyon Grace, even though they had never met. They knew of each other only through stories, rumors, and paintings, despite Joseph frequently traveling to Baldur's Gate for merchant duties. During the invasion of the Elder Netherbrain, a huge fleet of nautiloids breached the area southeast of Waterdeep and Daggerford. Joseph had been traveling back from Waterdeep along the tradeway. A couple of hours after the initial attack, Joseph was seen nearly dead, ripped to shreds, bleeding out, and breathing heavily. Yet, he was being carried, healed, and cared for by a massive undead army. This horde consisted of brainless humans who had fallen to the Illithids, alongside undead dwarves, gnomes, gith, giants, trolls, orcs, goblins, elves, and fairies. Most shockingly, he commanded a massive number of undead Illithids. When the Elder Netherbrain fell, Joseph's undead Illithids remained, though they suffered from a spastic, nerve-twitching effect following the brain's death. Because Joseph had never previously displayed any necromancy magic, some suspected he had learned these dark arts from an unknown, shadowy source. Ralphemian Vermillion BorrenVorg. The 25th son of Bloodbeard, a pirate who once sailed the Sword Coast, Ralphemian worked as a privateer under the port guard of Orsin. He was seen on the day the Illithids attacked. The Empire of Amn was hit almost as hard as Baldur's Gate. Due to their strict laws on magic, they relied on only a handful of corrupted wizards, sorcerers, and artificers, leading to massive casualties. As the Illithids advanced toward the Green Fields, a group of warriors, humans of the Borren and Vorg families, alongside giants and elves, stood north of the Snakewoods. They created a frontline fortress to prevent the invasion from reaching Burdusk and Iriabor while citizens evacuated. Like most resistance forces, 90% of them quickly fell to the Mind Flayer's magic or manipulation, turning the defense into a desperate bloodbath. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found vast open lands littered with the dead. Passing the Snakewoods, they trembled at the sight of a giant, misty blood rain cloud, conjured through dark and forbidden magic. Ralphemian stood at the heart of the storm, controlling the blood as it rained from the clouds, piercing the ground and shattering into shards that decimated the Illithids in a relentless massacre. As the enemies fell, their blood was drained and pulled back into the clouds to be reused as ammunition. Arola May Evergreen. A half-elf from Baldur's Gate, Arola originally sought out Jaheira, hoping to work under the woman she had viewed as a hero for over a century. However, Arola was abducted by a nautiloid. By some miracle, the ship crashed in the middle of the River Thultanthar. For an agonizing, traumatizing 4 months, she survived with an Illithid parasite in her head, remaining anonymous to avoid those hunting the infected. Captured by cultists of the Absolute, Arola played along as a chosen. Using Speak with Dead to learn that they were worshipping an elder brain, she lived with the grave knowledge that she would eventually turn into a mind flayer. When the Elder Netherbrain initiated a wave to transform the infected across Baldur's Gate, Waterdeep, and Amn, those far from the brain did not transform immediately but could share the hive mind's thoughts. This psionic wave drove many to madness. Arola was later seen at the Dreadrot battle blockage in the region formerly known as Rythwin, later Orsin. Once a vibrant, fertile forest freed from the shadow curse, it had become a withered battleground. Arola was seen executing Illithids using unique psionic powers. Even after being gravely wounded, with her ribs smashed and her neck cut, she was rushed to a cleric, only to immediately return to the front line. Enchanting her spear with psionic energy, she held back the approaching Illithids with devastating gravitational lunges and impalements. Simon Vyon Grace. An exiled member of the Vyon family, Simon was banished for his brutal experimentation on living creatures. Before Eltural's descent, Simon had found sadistic pleasure in the city's fate, believing the people belonged in Avernus. However, after Elturel ascended back to the mortal plane, something in Simon changed. He sensed that his immediate family had perished, though distant relatives survived. During the Illithid invasion, Simon was present at the Dreadrot battle blockage, allegedly taking part in its construction and defense. Simon used the Illithid's own psionic network against them, infecting the front line with devastating curses. Any mind flayer that connected to Simon's mind experienced these hexes. The scent of the pariah psychically severed the Illithid from the elder brain, turning it into an outcast driven insane by the sudden, deafening silence of losing the hive mind. The vegan's hex prevented the mind flayer from digesting humanoid brains. Forced to consume decaying plant matter or animal brains, the Illithid suffered intense physical agony, the loss of its psionic powers, and deep disgust. The empathy curse forced the mind flayer to permanently absorb the memories, emotions, and agonizing final thoughts of every brain it consumed. Instead of feeding its intellect, every meal flooded its mind with paralyzing guilt and human sorrow. Once the elder netherbrain was defeated, Simon attempted to reverse the damage using the Ceramorphosis Reversal, a slow, horrific curse where the host's original personality and anatomy began to overwrite the Illithid's body from the inside out. Unfortunately, 99% of the subjects died in the process. The great families of Orsin. Following the battle of the elder netherbrain, a new settlement named Orsin was established near the river Thultanthar by refugees and migrants from across the swordcoast. Within this new society, several powerful factions emerged, known as the Great Families. The Borren family. Once farmers in the fields of the dead, they migrated to the central area of the river Thultanthar between Baldur's Gate and Elturel, near where the Nautiloid crashed. Known for their agricultural knowledge, the Borren family grows rare, labor-intensive herbs and spices like saffron and vanilla, as well as ginger. They are most famous for their wine grapes. Using plant growth magic to double production, their returns are exponential. They share a lucrative deal with the Grace family to produce Vermillion wine. The family head, Dugestus BorrenVorg, was originally a pirate under Bloodbeard. Now a rugged, middle-aged man, he led his family to Orsin, where they established their reputation by providing the brute workforce needed to build roads, homes, and farmlands, vastly accelerating Orsin's construction. The Grace family. Once a lower-class family struggling in the rugged areas of Baldur's Gate, they survived on shady trades and low-profit merchant dealings. After their home in the upper city was destroyed by the Netherbrain, half the family stayed to rebuild Baldur's Gate, while the other half migrated to Orsin to capitalize on the booming trade. The family head, Vyon Grace, is a shrewd businesswoman and formidable politician. Mimicking Baldur's Gate's Knights of the Shield, she founded the Knights of Grace, a law-enforcing group working beneath the great families to maintain peace and order in Orsin. Julia maintains her power by placing lower-ranking family members in key organizations across the settlement. Additionally, a bridging member between the Vorg and Grace families serves as the youngest high-ranking member of the Grace family, renowned as one of the most powerful sorcerers in Orsin. The Vorg family, originally an artisan family of forgers, smiths, and crafters from Candlekeep, the Vorgs migrated northeast to the river Thultanthar after the Illithid attacks. The family head, Gelden Vorg, allied with the Grace and Evergreen families to establish massive trade contracts. The Vorg family transported massive loads of planks, nails, stone, and food to rebuild Baldur's Gate and Elturel. This allowed the Grace family to expand their trade routes and enabled the Evergreen family to build manors on the outskirts of both cities, turning simple merchant outposts into grand family estates. The Vyon family, a formerly well-off, highly religious family from Elturel. After the city ascended from Avernus, the Vyons lost their faith, turning rogue to focus entirely on survival, prosperity, and political power. Overcoming their newfound hatred for fiends and tieflings, they blended into Orsin society, rapidly rising in rank and wealth. The family head, William de Vyon, funded the construction of schools, parks, public gardens, and watermills, providing refugees with essential resources and opportunities. The Vyon family also secured a pact with the Flaming Fist of Baldur's Gate to expand their protective influence across the river Thultanthar. The Evergreen family, originally a family of rogues and bandits who hid in outlaw camps within the woods of Sharp Teeth. Upon hearing of the new settlement of Orsin, they adopted the Evergreen surname to blend in. Initially planning to take over the settlement's underworld, they were thwarted by Orsin's heavy fortifications. Their original leaders were tried, punished, and sentenced to hard labor. Following this, powerful sorcerers and warlocks took over the family. They shifted to legitimate businesses, starting with beekeeping and fur trading. When the Grace family cornered the fur trade, the Evergreens pivoted to law enforcement, joining the River Guard. One of their captains, Eustace Evergreen, became a local hero after foiling an infiltration plot by the dragon cult of Tiamat. This elevated the Evergreens to great family status. The current head, Charlotte May Evergreen, oversees the Evergreen Guard, a highly trained perimeter defense force comprised of reformed rogues from the woods of Sharp Teeth. The Vermillion family, an ancient human family that once dwelled deep in the Underdark near the Shadow Falls, a massive, continent-sized chasm where a cascading flow of solidified necrotic shadow falls into even deeper darkness. Thousands of years ago, the Vermillions were heavily involved in drow trafficking and slavery. After centuries of indulging in drow culture, art, and society, only a handful of pure-blooded human Vermillions remain. The family head, Amelia Velician Vermillion, is a cold, calculated, and stoic politician. She helped fund the Orsin Academy alongside the other great families, creating a central hub for wizards, sorcerers, and alchemists. Amelia holds a stern grip over the dark arts and hidden mischief within Orsin. She is also credited with granting asylum to 5,000 drow refugees escaping Lolth's realm, bringing them into the light of Illustrae with the help of her younger brother, Joseph Saint Vermillion Grace.